So meet my girlfriend, Marsha Levine. She comes from Delaware. She grew up on Long Island, and she's a pretty independent soul. And I love her for that reason. And that's why I want to interview her tonight for all of you DigiDame readers, because she does things that most of us don't do. And part of it is really traveling alone or experiencing things alone, even though she has a partner. And she could easily stay at home and do nothing like a lot of us, but she ventures out all the time. And one of the things she does, because her partner is not really as crazy as she is about traveling, is she goes all over the world. And Marsha, tell us, you don't mind going by yourself? What's wrong with you?
Well, I need a lot of visual stimulation. I enjoy a lot of mental stimulation. So I really want to be out there in the world. So consequently, I get out there in the world. I've recently decided that I wanted to learn Spanish. So I have gone to different countries to immerse myself in the Spanish language. I live with a family. I go to school for 20 hours a week, and I enjoy the culture while I'm there and can go and do side trips from the countries that I go in.
So where are these countries, because you haven't told us?
I've been to Costa Rica, Uruguay to learn Spanish, and this year I'll be going to Argentina to learn Spanish.
And you're not afraid to go by yourself?
No.
Are you crazy? Is there something wrong with you? Why aren't you afraid?
Well, most of the other countries that I've gone to are safer than it is here in the United States. You know, I grew up in New York, and I lived in Washington, D.C., which at one time was the murder capital of the world. So what's to be afraid of?
So when you go there, like, what's the most horrific thing being alone?
Probably the most horrific thing is the first day that you arrive until you get the lay of the land. So I always like to get there a day before I start school so I can exchange some money, walk around my neighborhood, find out what's what and where I'm going. And then I'm ready to start school.
And that's the worst thing that happens, being alone?
That's probably the worst thing.
And you never feel like, oh my God, I'm here all by myself and the rest of my friends and family are someplace else and I'm in a strange land, what am I doing here?
Well, with modern technology, I'm only a phone call away, either by WhatsApp, Skype, or Viber. So you can, I talk to my partner twice a day.
So you feel connected?
I really do feel connected.
So just for the audience, just before we started this video, Susan called Marsha just to say goodnight. A lot of sweet, commentary went between the two of them. And good night. And Marsha's here with me, and Marsha's perfectly fine spending a few weeks in South Beach. She's done this before, that's why we know each other. And she's fine. She rented an apartment here, does her thing, goes about her business, and has a grand old time, while Susan likes to stay in Delaware where they live because she loves the winters, and Marsha doesn't. And that's just very normal for the two of them, correct?
It's correct. Why should I be denied what I want to do? Why should she be denied what she wants to do? We trust each other explicitly, so it's not a problem. I hate the cold. If I were up north, I would never go out the door. And if she were here down south, she would be complaining of the heat. So I go off on my own, and I'll be going off to India in February because she doesn't want to go to India. So I'm going. I have a bucket list of about 30 countries that I want to go to. I've been to about 40 countries so far, and I want to continue to travel as long as I can.
So how long a time are you usually away from each other?
About 3 months, although sometimes I go home for a weekend.
But you're very, very close, and you have a very traditional type of relationship. So the rest of us that won't go an afternoon away from the other partner, that's weird to you, right?
Yes, it is weird. We have friends who spend every moment together. That to me is weird. How do you have your individuality if you're always with somebody else?
But Marsha, most people are afraid once they're in a committed relationship to leave each other because it's threatening. They are insecure. They don't want to say it out loud, but they don't trust the other person, or it's just not natural to them to go off on their own. Most people would think that you're going out and doing the nasty.
Right. Well, you have to trust each other, and we both trust each other, so it's not an issue.
So when you go to India, or you've been to South America a lot by yourself,
yes,
what do you hope to accomplish that really makes these trips worthwhile?
I want to learn more Spanish, that's number one, but number two, I want to experience another culture from inside the land. I live with a family, I do what they do, I go where they go, so I really get to really experience the people, and that's what I want to do. And I do go off on the weekends and make little side trips to various places around the areas.
And nobody ever threatens you? You never feel like someone's going to harm you or want to hurt you because you're an American or you're a single woman on your own?
No, I can't say that I feel threatened. I think that there are places that I will not go because they might be more dangerous, but I feel like I have a good sense of where to go and where not to go.
Okay. And what did you do? What was your career?
Most of my career, I was in cardiac surgical sales. So in order to talk to cardiac surgeons, you really do have to have a lot of moxie, because most of the time they don't want to give you the time of day.
And how long did you do that for, and what was the company?
I worked for Medtronic for 7 or 8 years. I worked for a company that was owned by Pfizer for 7 or 8 years, and I worked for started out in pharmaceuticals. I worked for another company for 7 or 8 years. I get bored, obviously, after 7 or 8 years.
And do you have the same attitude towards getting new jobs as traveling alone on this earth?
What do you mean?
I mean, in terms of like, you're not afraid to go out for a new job, or you don't feel you have to stay at a job because it's secure, and you don't know what the future brings, and you don't want to knock on that door?
Well, if you stay in the same place, then sometimes you get stuck, and I don't want to be stuck. I want to be able to move and try new things, and every time I've made a move, it's always been for the better.
So do you have a lot of friends that think the way you do?
I would say no.
So you like the maniac weirdo, or what?
Yeah, my friends call me the wandering Jew.
So do they respect it, or they fear it, or?
No, I think most people respect what I do, and they say, oh, I wish I could do that. And I say, well, why can't you? And they don't have an answer for that.
And what is your feeling about that? What don't you think about it at all?
I think I've always had a fair amount of can-do in my life, I think I got a lot of that from my mother. My mother was a can-do person, and I think that I just feel like I can do anything.
So what do you think the rest of your life is going to be about?
If I'm lucky enough to be able to travel for as long as I can.
Is travel the #1 thing on your list?
Travel is the #1 thing on my list.
But I know that you do a lot of, you take courses, you do a lot of reading, you have a big group of friends, very diversified. So, like, what's on the agenda?
Travel. Mostly travel. I do have, the one thing I do want to do is, I said I have 4 stone sculptures that I started, and I want to finish them before I die.
Will you?
I hope so. I'm going to take a stone sculpture class this summer up in Vermont.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Another thing on your bucket
Another
list.
thing on my list.
Tell everybody where your other travels are going to be in the future.
Jeez.
And you've been all over the world already, so let's establish that.
I want to hit all 7 continents, so I think next year we're going to do Antarctica, Iceland. I haven't been to Africa yet, so that's high on my list. And then, you know, I can't think of all the places that I want to go, but I do have a bucket list, and I keep it in front of me on my phone so I can look at it at any moment.
So I guess I'm here feeling like a lot of people that are watching this are asking me, when you travel, do you travel alone, or do you travel on a group plan? What do you do? It's not when you go to immerse yourself in the language. That's not a tour. But when you travel, who are you usually traveling with?
I've traveled with Odysseys and Overseas Adventures and Gate 1 Travel.
Okay.
And I've been happy with all of them.
Oh, you know what I do want you to tell the audience, because you told me this when we were having dinner, about what Overseas Travel has told you they're going to do on this trip to India.
They are going to be doing some filming of solo travelers for publicity, I guess. Overseas Adventures is the one tour company that does not charge extra if you travel solo, which is really quite nice. I don't know any other company that does that. So they will be doing some photographing and videography on this trip to India.
And they asked you about the permission to do this.
Yeah, they asked me if it would be okay. So I think there'll be, I don't know if there's any other people solo on this trip, but they did ask if it was okay.
So when you go on this trip, and I know you've done river cruises also.
Yes.
But how do you get involved with the crowd? Do you ever feel like, oh, they don't want to sit with me, or I'm being, I'm kind of like being pushy about inserting myself into their group? How does that work?
Well, you gotta jump in, because if you don't get to enjoy the other people that you're with.
Do you ever feel like they may not want you part of them, or?
Well, actually, this is the first time I've traveled. Oh, no, it's not. No, I don't feel that way.
And if you felt that way, it would be just tough noogies.
Just tough noogies, just kind of move on. And people are very accepting. When they see that you're alone in a group, they really do want to take you into that group.
So that's a beautiful feeling.
It is a nice feeling. Last year, I was supposed to go to Colombia with a friend, and she couldn't go, and I found myself alone. And it was wonderful because everybody in the group just embraced me.
So one of the reasons why I'm friendly with Marsha, and we have a common group of friends, is because she's so independent, and it always amazes me every time I speak to her. She's always on to something new, and amazes me that she's not a typical Jewish broad that's that feels like oh, what is other people going to think? What is other people going to say? And and you just go about your business, and you're enjoying life, no matter whether you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, or 90.
I hope so. I hope I can continue to travel till I'm 90.
Why is it so important to you?
I just love the visual stimulation, the mental stimulation, the emotional stimulation of being in another culture.
That's amazing. And by the way, Marsha has children. So if you're thinking, oh, well, you know what, she doesn't have children and grandchildren, she certainly does, and keeps up with a full family, siblings, cousins.
I do.
Yes, she does. She's a very family-oriented gal, and yet this is so important to her, and she's not going to miss a minute of it.
I hope not.
Thank you for letting us be a part of your life.
You're welcome.